The wind howled through the broken remains of the alien city, carrying dust, silence, and something else. A voice, soft and shaking, hidden in the cold wind. Ryan stopped walking, his boots crunching over cracked stone and ice. He looked around, the ruins scanning for movement. His helmet lights flickered across twisted metal beams and shattered glass. Just the wind, he muttered, turning back toward his shuttle, but then he heard it again. Please, help my mother. He froze, hand near his sidearm. Who's there? He called out. Silence. Then from behind a broken pillar, a small shape appeared. It was a child, not human, but alien. She had pale blue skin, long silver hair, and large eyes filled with fear. Her clothes were torn, her feet bare. She didn't look dangerous. But Ryan had learned not to trust easily. The galaxy was full of traps. Still, her voice shook, and her lips were blue from the cold. Please, she said again. My mother? She's sick. We're cold. Hungry. Ryan slowly lowered his hand from his weapon. Where is she? He asked carefully. The girl pointed toward the west side of the ruins. She turned and began to walk, limping slightly. Ryan hesitated for only a second before following her. They moved through fallen buildings and dark alleyways. Most of the colony had been destroyed years ago during the war. No one came here anymore, not even scavengers. The child looked back every few steps to make sure Ryan was still with her. She didn't speak again, just kept walking. After nearly 10 minutes, she stopped at a tent made from ripped plastic and cloth. It was barely standing, held up by scrap metal and ropes. Inside, 3 more small figures huddled together. And beside them, lying on a thin blanket, was a woman. She looked weak, very weak. Her face was thin, her eyes half closed. But even in her state, she had a beauty that was hard to ignore. Long silver hair, soft features, and a calm sadness in her expression. When she saw Ryan, she tried to sit up but fell back down, coughing. The child ran to her side and held her hand. He came, the girl whispered. He followed me, Mama. Ryan stepped inside slowly, looking around. The children were silent, eyes wide and tired. They were too thin, their cheeks hollow, their limbs shaking. He dropped his backpack and took out emergency rations, water packs, and a heater cube. He placed them gently near the children. They didn't move until the mother nodded, then rushed to eat. The mother tried to speak, her voice raspy. Human. Thank you. But this isn't safe for you. Ryan knelt beside her. I'm not afraid. He said, why didn't you send a signal? A distress call? She looked away, ashamed, because no one answers. She said quietly, not for us. She took a deep breath, then whispered something that made Ryan's stomach turn. If you can, please, adopt them. Take them far from here. Give them a chance to live. Ryan blinked, confused. What about you? She smiled, weakly. I'm dying, she said simply. There's no medicine left. No time. Ryan felt something heavy in his chest. I won't leave you here, he said. I can try to help. But the woman shook her head slowly. You don't understand, she whispered. We're being watched. If they see you with us, they'll kill you too. Before Ryan could ask more, the tense shadow shifted. Something moved outside, just for a second. Ryan turned quickly, drawing his weapon, but nothing was there. Just the wind again. Still, the feeling of eyes watching didn't fade. He stepped outside and looked around carefully, scanning the ruins, empty, but his instincts told him danger wasn't far. He returned inside, sealing the tent flap behind him. He looked at the children again, 3 girls. 1 small boy, all under 10 years old. All silent, all scared. They watched him with wide eyes, holding bits of food close to their chests like treasure. Then Ryan looked at the mother again. What's your name? He asked Leora. She said softly, "And they are all I have." Left, Ryan sat down, staring at the heater cube as it flickered to life. He didn't come here to adopt alien kids. He didn't come here to get involved. But something about this felt right. Something about their silence, their trust. And the widow's broken voice stirred something deep inside him. The children curled up beside him, tired and full for the first time in days. Leora whispered her final request, her voice shaking with emotion, "Adopt them, and end my loneliness. Please, human." The night was cold, but inside the tent, warmth returned slowly. The heater cube glowed, giving soft light to the torn fabric walls. Ryan sat near the entrance, holding his rifle, watching shadows flicker outside. Leora, the alien widow, lay on the blanket with her eyes half open, her breathing shallow. The children were asleep, their little bodies huddled together like baby birds. Only the eldest girl stayed awake, her eyes staring at Ryan from across the tent. "She said you'd come," the girl whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind. Ryan looked at her, confused. "Your mother?" The girl nodded. "She dreamed of a human who'd save us." He didn't know what to say. He wasn't a savior, just a traveler, just a man with a ship and an old gun. But something in Leora's words, in her face, kept him rooted. She opened her eyes again, slow and heavy, and looked at him. "Why haven't you left yet?" she asked, her voice dry. "I should," Ryan said, "but I didn't want to." Leora smiled faintly. "You remind me of him," she whispered. "My husband." She tried to sit up, groaning in pain. Ryan reached out to help her, but she gently pushed his hand away. "Don't," she said softly. "I'm used to pain." Ryan sat back, silent. She looked at the children, their fragile bodies wrapped in worn blankets. "They don't know what a full belly feels like," she said, her voice cracking. "They don't remember laughter." She looked at Ryan again, and her eyes were full of something deeper: shame, sorrow, fear. "I was a soldier's wife. But now I beg in ruins," she said. "Every door shut on us, every voice turned cold." Ryan clenched his jaw. "No one deserves that," he said quietly. She laughed, a weak, broken sound. "Aliens do." In their eyes, a moment passed in silence. Outside, the wind howled again. But it couldn't drown what she said next. "If you take them, I will." "Disappear," Leora said. "No strings, no burden. I will vanish with the wind." Ryan looked at her sharply. "You'd leave your children?" She shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "I would die in peace, knowing they are safe." Her words struck him harder than any weapon. He stood and walked to the entrance, pulling the flaps slightly open. His eyes scanned the ruins, dark, quiet, but something wasn't right. He closed it again and turned back. "Someone's watching," he said. Leora nodded slowly. "I know," she said. "They've followed us for weeks, bounty men, slavers, worse." I ran, hid, begged. But nothing worked. She looked at him again, this time her eyes burning with something fierce. "I have one last promise," she whispered. "If you save them, I will never stop fighting for you." Ryan stared at her, confused. "I'm not asking for a warrior," he said. "You don't understand," she replied, her voice calm, but intense. "There's a reason they want me gone." She reached into a small cloth pouch beside her and took out a thin metallic shard. Ryan stepped forward, examining it under the heater light. It was a data crystal, marked with a royal crest one. He recognized, "You were royalty?" he asked, shocked. She smiled, almost sadly. "My husband led a rebellion," she said. "I led the secrets." Before Ryan could ask more, the tent suddenly shook. A faint sound, like footsteps crunching in snow, passed near them. Ryan raised his rifle and moved to the entrance again. Silence, then a whisper in the distance: alien. Guttural, not friendly. He backed away, whispering, "We have to move soon." Leora sat up, her strength returning through pain and purpose. "I can walk," she said. Ryan nodded, then looked at the sleeping children. "Can they?" "They'll follow me," she whispered. "They always do." Outside, the wind blew harder. But it carried something more than cold now. It carried danger. It carried eyes. And as Ryan prepared to lead them out of the ruins, he realized something. Terrifying, he wasn't just protecting children anymore. He was guarding the spark of a rebellion, a widow with a buried past, and a promise that would shake the stars. They moved through the ruins like shadows. Ryan led the way, scanning every corner. Every rooftop. Behind him, Leora carried her smallest child. The others followed close. No one spoke. Not even the wind dared to make a sound now. The city was. Holding its breath, Ryan's ship was parked just beyond the collapsed tower walls. If they reached it, they might be safe for the night. But deep in his gut, he knew it wouldn't be that easy. The kind of men hunting Leora didn't give up. Not when there were secrets worth killing for. As they crossed a street of cracked glass and rusted bones, one of the children stumbled. Ryan turned fast. Lifting the boy into his arms without a word, the boy blinked up at him with tired eyes and whispered, "You smell like heat packs and metal." Ryan smiled for the first time in days. "Better than cold and dust," he replied when they finally reached the ship. Ryan quickly scanned the area. No movement, no drones, just silence. He opened the ramp and guided them inside. Leora looked around the small cargo ship with wide eyes. "It's warm," she whispered, her voice breaking. The children scattered, curling up near the vents and heater grates. They didn't ask for toys or sweets. They just curled up like they were scared it might vanish. That was when Ryan realized it wasn't just food they needed, it was peace. Ryan brought out more ration packs, filling bowls with hot liquid food. They ate with both hands, not stopping to breathe. Leora sat quietly in the corner, her arms wrapped around her knees. "I told them not to get used to warmth," she said softly. "It never lasts." Ryan kneeled in front of her, his voice calm. "They can stay here, all of you," but she shook her head. "You don't know what that means." "Human?" Ryan frowned. "I know they deserve better." She pulled back her sleeve, showing him a faint glowing line on her wrist. It was not a scar, not a tattoo. It pulsed golden and alive. A royal tracker. Ryan whispered, recognizing it. She nodded. "They don't care about me," she said, "but the children. They carry his blood." Ryan felt a cold weight drop into his chest. "You're saying they're royal heirs?" "Yes," she replied. "And they want them gone so no one remembers who their father was." Ryan stood slowly, staring out the small window. He thought about the starving kids, the cracked lips, the shaking hands, and now, the truth: they were being hunted not because they were weak, but because they were born powerful. Suddenly, a warning light flashed on his control panel, motion sensor east side of the ship. Ryan rushed over and checked the screen to heat signatures. Moving. "Slow scouts, get to the lower hold," he said sharply. Leora didn't ask questions. She moved fast, gathering the children and disappearing below. Ryan grabbed his rifle and activated his ship's defense grid. Turrets powered up, quiet but deadly. Then he opened the comms. Unidentified scouts. "State your business," he said through the speaker. Silence. Then a crackling voice replied, "Routine salvage check. No trouble here. Human." Ryan narrowed his eyes. No salvage crew walked this deep into a dead zone, especially at night. He kept the comms open but said nothing. Seconds later, the heat signatures stopped moving. They were waiting, watching. Ryan killed the outside lights and stepped back. Heart pounding. They weren't here to search. They were here to confirm. Someone had tracked Leora's signal back in the lower hold. Leora crouched beside the children. One of them, the smallest. Was shaking. Mama, the girl whispered. Why can't we ever rest? Leora held her close, tears in her eyes. I don't know, she said, but I hope this time. Maybe we can. Above, Ryan checked his weapons and set the emergency lock on the ramp. He had only a few choices now: fight, flee, or bluff. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about hunger anymore. It was about bloodlines, secrets, and a family the galaxy wanted to erase, and now he was a part of it. The night was quiet, too quiet. Inside the ship, Ryan didn't sleep. He sat in the pilot's chair, eyes fixed on the motion sensors. The 2 heat signatures were still out. There, unmoving, waiting like wolves. He didn't like it. No crew waited in silence for hours unless they were planning something. And deep in his heart, he knew this wasn't salvage. This was a hunt. Down in the cargo hold, Leora sat awake too. The children slept huddled near the warmth of the ship's engine. But she couldn't rest. Not tonight. Not with her past catching. Up so fast, she looked at her hands once trained in combat, hands once trusted by leaders. Now they only trembled when she held her children. She hated that, but she'd give her life before letting fear take her babies away. Footsteps echoed above, soft but firm. Ryan entered, carrying a blanket and 2 hot cups of tea. He handed one to Leora and sat beside her on the floor. We've got eyes on us, he said quietly. She nodded without surprise. They found me sooner than I thought, she whispered, taking a sip. Ryan looked at her, his voice gentle but firm. You said they wanted you gone because of your husband? I did, she replied, but there's more. She placed the cup down and reached into her coat. From a hidden pocket, she pulled out a small sphere, no bigger than a stone. It pulsed faint blue in her palm. Ryan leaned closer. What is that? She held it like it weighed 1,000 suns. A command key, she said, her voice low. To a fleet buried beneath the ice on Zephyr. Ryan blinked. Stunned. Zephyr is gone, he said. Wiped out during the war. Leora looked at him and her eyes burned like twin suns. No, she said. It only sleeps. She explained in short breaths. Her husband had led a rebellion against the Empire. But their greatest weapon wasn't a supergun or army. It was knowledge hidden. Ships buried in deep vaults, untouched, waiting, and the command key. It linked to them all. Ryan stared at her, his mouth dry. You're not just a widow, he said. You're the spark. Leora smiled, bitter and proud. They thought killing him would end the fire, she whispered. They never guessed he'd give the last piece to his wife. Ryan stood and walked a few steps away, trying to think. This wasn't just about saving kids anymore. This was about power. Dangerous, world-changing power. He looked back at her. So the bounty hunters. They're not here for the children, she nodded. They want the key. A sudden crash made them both jump. The ship shook a small explosion near the outer ramp. Alarms blinked red, and Ryan rushed to the control panel. He checked the cameras too. Figures outside, one planting a second charge. They're trying to breach, he growled. Leora grabbed her children, her face pale with fear. Take the key, she said, holding out the glowing sphere. If they get it, thousands will die. Ryan hesitated only for a second, then took it and slipped it into his pocket. You're not dying today, he said. I'm not letting that happen. He activated the lockdown system and grabbed his rifle. Leora stepped beside him, holding a small blade from her boot. You're injured, Ryan said. I'm also their mother, she replied. And I'll fight outside. The second charge blew, shaking the ship again. The metal ramp bent inward, but didn't break. Inside, the children cried out, hugging each other tight. Ryan looked at them, then at Leora, and in that moment, he wasn't just a protector. He was part of this broken family, and he'd fight like one. He turned back to the screen, narrowed his eyes, and whispered, They're not taking you. because now he had more than a mission. He had a secret that could save or destroy entire planets. He had children who looked at him like a father and a widow who had once led a rebellion. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about legacy. Smoke curled through the air. The ramp groaned under pressure, bent but holding. Ryan's hands shook slightly as he loaded his last energy cell into the rifle. Leora stood beside him, one hand on her blade, her other arm shielding the smallest child. She was pale, still bleeding from her side, but her eyes burned with fire. Outside. Footsteps circled the ship, slow, careful, hunting. They're waiting for us to panic. Ryan said under his breath. Leora nodded. Then let's panic in the direction of freedom, she replied, her lips curving into a tight smile. Ryan almost laughed, but the siren warning from the control panel made his chest tighten again. They had minutes before the next blast, maybe less. He opened the floor hatch to the lower crawl space. This leads to the back escape chute, he said, waving the children down first. The smallest boy clung to Ryan's arm. You're not leaving us? Ryan shook his head. Not a chance. Kid. The family slipped through the narrow space. Crawling through steam and wires, Ryan followed last, pausing only to set the auto-detonation protocol for the ship. Self-destruct in 10 minutes. The system voice whispered. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It was bait. They emerged into the frozen dark, behind a wall of collapsed stone and glass. No sounds, no movement, just the night and the stars. Ryan picked up the little girl, Leora, held her youngest close. The others followed, clutching each other's hands. Where now? Leora asked, breathing hard. Ryan pointed toward the edge of the ruins. There's an old mining tunnel, 1 mile east. If we can reach it, we'll vanish. They started running feet, sliding across debris, dodging shadows. But they hadn't made it far when the sharp cry of a sensor drone filled the air. Ryan spun around, red light pulsing through the mist. They found us, he snapped. Leora turned to the children, her voice fierce but soft. Stay together, no matter what. A shot cracked through the night too close. A beam hit the wall beside Ryan, showering them in sparks. He turned and fired back. Hitting the drone, it exploded mid-air, but more footsteps came now. Louder, faster. They had to keep moving. Ryan scooped up another child and pushed forward, his lungs burned, legs screaming, beside him. Leora staggered but didn't stop. Blood soaked her sleeve, but she held her blade tight. One child tripped Ryan, grabbed her arm, and lifted her without slowing. We're almost there, he growled. You said that 10 minutes ago, Leora hissed. Ryan glanced at her and grinned. I lie when I'm scared. Behind them. Another blast rocked the ground. The ship. It was gone now. And with it, there. Trailiff, they were lucky. Smoke filled the air, cutting the stars. And through that smoke, they reached the entrance to the tunnel. A broken hatch covered in moss and dust. Ryan forced it open with both hands, metal groaning under strain. One by one, they crawled inside. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing out the night. Sealing in the dark, Ryan dropped to the floor. Gasping, Leora leaned against the tunnel wall, legs giving out. The children sat in silence, scared, but alive for now. They had made it, but it wasn't over. Where does this lead? She asked quietly. Ryan switched on his light and stared down the long path ahead. To an old supply hub, he said, buried under the ice, far off the map. No one will find us there. Leora looked at him, eyes full of pain, but also something else. Trust. You didn't have to do this, she said. Ryan reached over and gently touched her bleeding shoulder. And you didn't have to fight beside me, he replied. I've lost people, she whispered. I thought I couldn't bear to care again. Ryan nodded slowly. But you did. In that frozen tunnel, surrounded by darkness and danger, they found something warmer than fire. Something heavier than duty. A bond that had no name yet. But it was growing. Outside, the bounty hunters searched empty ruins. Inside, a family that shouldn't exist kept moving forward, quiet, hurt, tired, but together. And that was enough to keep going. The tunnel stretched for miles, cold and silent. Old lights blinked weakly above. Some long dead, some flickering like tired stars. Ryan walked in front, rifle ready, footsteps slow, behind him. The children shuffled in silence, their tiny hands holding tightly to one another. Leora brought up the rear, limping but alert. Her blade still strapped to her side, her skin was pale, her breath shallow. But she didn't stop. Every step forward was survival. Every breath a choice to keep going. They had escaped fire, drones, bounty hunters. But safety was still far, and the cold below was starting to bite. They reached an old service hatch, rusted and half buried in ice. Ryan forced it open, revealing a room filled with crates, blankets, and broken supplies. "This is it," he said, voice low. "It's not much, but it's ours for now." The children crawled onto the old mats and fell asleep within seconds. Their faces finally peaceful, bodies finally still. Ryan pulled Leora into a corner and helped her sit down. She winced, clutching her side where blood had soaked through. He gently cleaned the wound, hands careful but firm. "You should have told me how deep this was," he said. "I didn't want to slow you down," she whispered back. "You didn't." He replied, "You kept them alive. That's everything." Leora's eyes fluttered, heavy with exhaustion, but before she could rest, Ryan leaned closer, his voice sharp. "What happens if they catch us again?" She looked at him, slowly understanding what he meant. "If they get the children, they'll erase them," she said softly. "Not just kill Ryan. They'll pretend these kids never existed." Ryan stared at the sleeping little ones, barely surviving, barely beginning, and something snapped inside him. "No," he said, "not while I'm breathing." He stood up, pacing the room, eyes scanning the maps on the wall-owed routes, escape lines, smuggler paths. He remembered one, a hidden dock. In the southern ridge, if they reached it, they could signal a transport ship, maybe even leave the planet. He looked back at Leora. "Can you still fight?" She sat up slowly, nodding. "I can still protect what's mine." As she spoke, the lights above them dimmed again, then went out. Ryan grabbed his rifle, heart racing. From the far side of the tunnel, a faint metallic sound echoed footsteps. But not running, marching, rhythmic, robotic, hunting. They found the tunnel, Ryan growled. Leora stood, blade in hand, blood still dripping down her arm. "They always do," she whispered. "They never stop." Ryan activated the defense drone from his pack and sent it flying down the tunnel. The feed lit up his screen. 3 armored armored hunters, moving in a line, eyes glowing. They carried stun weapons, containment ropes, and scanners. "They don't want to kill," Ryan muttered. "They want to take us alive." Leora's voice dropped to a growl. "Because if they kill royal blood, it makes them monsters. But if they cleanse us quietly, no one ever knows." Ryan's hands tightened around his weapon. "They're not taking you," he said. "Not the kids, not you." The children stirred behind them, sensing danger in the air. One girl sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Are they back?" Leora knelt beside her, kissed her forehead. "Yes," she said gently. "But this time, we're ready." Ryan placed the command key around his neck and handed a small tracker to Leora. "If fall," he said. "You run with them, find the ridge, find the ship." Leora grabbed his wrist, eyes fierce. "You don't fall." She whispered, "Not for me, not for them, not alone." And in that moment, Ryan saw it. Not a widow, not a broken mother, but a leader, reborn, a queen. Without a crown, but with everything to fight for. He nodded, then turned toward the tunnel entrance. The metal echoed again, louder now. The fight was coming, and this time, Ryan wasn't just a traveler. He was a shield, he was a sword. He was the line between freedom and extinction. The children's blood was worth fighting for, so he would fight, even if it cost him everything. The tunnel shook with the sound of footsteps and fire. Ryan stood at the entrance with his rifle aimed, heart pounding like a war drum. Beside him, Leora breathed heavily, her blade trembling in her hand, but her eyes fierce. Behind them, the children waited, silent, afraid, but not alone anymore. The first bounty hunter appeared from the shadows, tall, armored, and fast. Ryan fired before the man could raise his weapon. The blast hit square in the chest, sending the hunter crashing back into the darkness. A second charged forward. Leora met him with steel. She moved like a memory of who she used to be, each step slow but filled with power. Her blade struck true, and the tunnel echoed with the sound of sparks and screams. But a third hunter slipped. Through fast and quiet, he darted past the fight and grabbed one of the children. The little girl cried out, "Mama!" Leora turned too late, but Ryan didn't. He sprinted like fire itself, tackled the hunter to the ground. They rolled through the dirt, fists swinging, weapons clashing. The hunter was strong, but Ryan was desperate. He punched, bit, clawed until the man stopped moving. He reached for the girl, held her tight, and whispered, "You're safe. You're safe. I promise." The silence after the fight felt like another world. Leora dropped to her knees, breathless, bleeding. Ryan stood, covered in dirt and bruises, arms shaking, but it was over. The hunters were down. The tunnel was theirs. And outside, waiting beyond the frozen ridge, was hope. 2 days passed, hidden. In the deep snows, Ryan repaired the distress beacon with parts from his broken drone. Leora nursed the children back to health, using old herbal knowledge from her homeworld. They shared food, stories, and warmth. The fire in the shelter was small, but it lit up their hearts like the sun. Then one evening, a ship answered their signal. A quiet trader, human-owned, old but fast. Ryan negotiated passage off the planet. In exchange for tech salvage and silence. No names, no questions, just flight. And soon, they were in the sky again, leaving the cold behind from the viewing window. The children pressed their faces to the glass, their eyes wide as stars filled the sky. This is what freedom looks like. Ryan whispered. Leora stood beside him, arm wrapped in bandages, eyes full of something more than relief. "You gave us more than freedom." She said, "You gave us a future." He looked at her, half smiling. "I didn't come here to start a family." "You didn't," she replied softly. "But you did anyway." Weeks later, on a quiet planet far from the Empire's reach, they landed. A small home sat on the edge of a green hill, overlooking blue skies and wild trees. It wasn't much, but to them, it was everything. Ryan built it with his own hands, plank by plank. The children ran through the fields, laughing for the first time in their lives. Leora sat on the porch, hair catching the wind, and when Ryan stepped beside her, she took his hand without a word. The war was over for now. The hunters would come again someday. But this time, they wouldn't be running. They would be ready. Because they were no longer a broken widow, a tired human, and 4 lost children. They were something stronger. They were a family. And in that new world, under a rising sun, the promise Leora once whispered finally came true. Her loneliness ended. Her children were safe. And beside her stood a human who never planned to be a father, but became one anyway.